Okay, hopefully we don't hear from her again. All right then. Good day, everyone. Really excited to have you all here. Um, I'm just going to start off introductions with Dr. Miser Keels, who's an associate professor in comparative human development at the University of Chicago, and also the founding director of the Trauma Responsive Education Practices Project, right? The TREP project. Ms. Sarah's major focus has been on understanding how race, ethnicity, and poverty structure the supports and challenges that children and youth experience. Currently, she's leading multiple projects, right? And essentially the work is to improve educational experiences and outcomes of students who come from historically marginalized communities by integrating a lot of mental health promotion interventions into the education systems, as well as structures starting from early childhood centers all the way to high school. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ms. Air. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
It's Misheri.
Ms. Sherry?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad I clarified that. Ms. Sherry, okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. Going over to Sonal Kapoor, who is the founder director of Protsahan India Foundation, an organization that's based in New Delhi, India. And they work on bridging the gap in the childcare systems by introducing an empathy-based system called the HEART model to heal childhood trauma and transform children who are facing adversity to reach their full potential, right, and just really thrive with access to education, healthcare, and gender justice. Protsahan under Sonal's leadership essentially has rescued over 948 girls and reaches out to more than 81,000 vulnerable children and adolescents every year through arts and technology, essentially mainstreaming programs in the slums of New Delhi currently. Thank you so much for joining us, Sonal. Very excited to have you on board.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Coming to Pavitra, who's the Associate Director of Dreamer Dreams Innovation Lab, where she's responsible for ensuring and engaging with over 10,000 young people, along with a 50+ member, really strong team, developing various skill development modules for young people. Pavitra is also super passionate about working with young people and believes in creating that sort of support system for young people to achieve their full potential. Her mission is to work with young people and transform their lives using a life skills approach. She also works as a lead facilitator, training teachers and community workers across the state of Karnataka. Thank you so much for joining in, Pavitra. I know it's been like a long day and long couple of weeks for us at Dream a Dream, but just really thanks for taking in the time today and joining us. Yeah. Coming over to Deepthi. Deepthi Mary is currently pursuing her MPhil in South Asian Studies at the University of Cambridge. Her interest is in unraveling the political economy of environmental conservation. She's also completed her master's from Jawaharlal Nehru University in India and also writes for Adivasi Lives Matter on the issues of indigenous community development and sustainability overall. Once again, thanks a lot for joining us, Deepthi, today. Really excited to have connected with you and just getting to know you over the last couple of weeks. Shravani, I've been speaking to Shravani for the last few days. Shravani has graduated from Dreamer Dreams, different skill development modules, right? And is currently pursuing her Bachelor of Arts in Commerce. She is fierce about being independent and supporting her parents. She's deeply passionate about promoting equity, compassion around her, and just ensuring that she, as well as her peers, have access to support systems overall, right? Shravani, thank you so much for joining us today and just going over multiple calls with me to figure out what this space is like. Very excited to have you here today.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to have me.
Thank you. Now that we've kind of gotten introductions out of the way, I'll just take a few minutes to frame what the next time that we have together is going to look like for us. So fundamentally, I think through this discussion, what we want to do is inquire into the short and long-term adversities that are suffered by different vulnerable populations in the context of that system they are entrenched in. how the different forms of consistent identity-based discrimination and abuse, which range from subtle to severe, how it shapes their identity, how it pulls them away gradually and steadily from leading a life that's filled with potential and possibilities, right? We're hence viewing this particular conversation, we're actually seeing like a series of conversations, but this conversation to start us off as a space to just gather that vital puzzle pieces to help us understand the larger complex system that we're working with, right? The insights that would help us unpack the scale and depth of the trauma and its influence on how children from afflicted identities develop. And when I say develop, we're going to be unpacking how they develop emotionally, socially, mentally, physically, just overall how it grows and manifests and stops them from leading thriving lives. And so to just start off our discussion, right, I think it would be prudent for us to understand that very point, to just like explore that very point to say, what is happening in the system, right? Our vision, I think, our dreamer dream, it's very simple. When we're saying that this child is thriving, we are seeing that child is a happy child, is a resilient child, and is a responsible child. Now, when we keep that vision in mind and we're seeing what's happening with children who come from vulnerable backgrounds, the children that we're all working with in different ways, we're trying to understand what is being denied by the system that's wrapping that child, that makes that vision impossible for children. And Michelle, wanted to start from you, right? To just understand from your ongoing research on understanding the interplay between socio-demographic characteristics like race, ethnicity, and poverty, and the individual's experience of that support and challenge in the system. What are some insights you could share with us on this?
So I really have to say before I start, just thank you guys for allowing me in your space. I feel like I am entering your space, and I really appreciate your willingness to have an outsider learn from you guys. I have to say, so for me, there is a particular joy in being here talking with you. My personal history is that I moved from Belize, which is in Central America. It's a former British colony, to Edmonton, which is Northern Canada. And at that time when I moved, the largest immigrant group in that community where I was actually from Pakistan. And also the next one was from India. And so I grew up in an immigrant community where most of my friends were actually from your region of the world. So I got the pleasure of, from about like age 9 on, having friends that allowed me a little bit of insight into your region of the world. And it has continued since throughout my career, and I've had the pleasure of having students from your region of the world in my program, in my graduate program. And so it's a real honor to be able to, for you guys to have me in your space. I would say the first bit of insight that I would give to that question would be from my own experience and why this kind of issue matters so much to me, which is that transition from Belize to Canada, which is that as an 8-year-old kid, what I transitioned from was a bubble where my family was Black, my teachers were Black, my doctors were Black. Most of the politicians that I saw and knew were Black. There were white people in Belize, but they were at a distance at that time. The country was actually, when I was born, we were still a British colony, but it was the end of that period. And so there was a whole lot of kind of nationalism and sentiment around who we were as Black people in this country and what we could be and what our future was. So I transitioned from that to the other extreme, which was a place in a country where was all white. And in terms of this, the difference in that was that I went from, and my parents were educated in England and Canada. So they had graduate degrees. My bubble was one of everything was possible in terms of how I perceive the world, to one where suddenly with just a move, my parents had to fight to have me stay in the same grade, because the assumption was, well, you're a Black child coming from this country, from this third world country, we will automatically, without any testing or anything, have to at least put her back one grade so that she can catch up. Well, actually, they ended up at the end of that year having to put me forward a grade, because as we know, our educational systems, our top tier educational systems in these countries are actually very strong. So immigrants coming from these countries don't need to be put back, don't need to even stay in the same or put back a grade. But from my experience, it was from one of ultimate possibilities in the world to, well, years and years and years of self-doubt and self-questioning. And years and years of continually having to prove that what I know about myself is true, what I know about my possibilities and what I know about my ability to do the work is true to others. And that continual having to, I can appreciate it now as an adult because it makes me very strong, but as a child, having to, I guess, assert yourself in a world of adults where we're actually, we take in what our adults tell us about ourselves. So we learn what's possible based on the information around us. We learn and have ideas about what's possible for ourselves based on all of that input. And so that's one of the things that really underlies my work, is how does the input that we get from our context, it's this passive input that's just kind of going along all day long that we are taking in. It's either something that's going to build us up and make us see a world full of possibilities, or something that we constantly have to push against to say, but I know I can do this, but this world is telling me something very different. And so am I right, or is the world right? And that's a very difficult thing for a child to do. It's just a very difficult thing for a child to do. And it places constraints. It narrows and narrows and narrows and narrows the vision that you see for yourself. And so that's kind of where I would actually start from. I would start from like that personal experience is one of those things that allowed me to see how much our context matters. And we spend so much time in schools. So that's why school is the context that matters so much for me. And it's the one that can either disrupt intergenerational poverty, if that's what's coming from the home and the community that someone lives in, or it can be the thing outside context that makes it harder for kids who, you can be in a very low income family, but that can be a very supportive and driving family. But does your school environment where you're spending so many hours of the day, does it facilitate that? Or is it something that you also have to fight against? It's just kind of how I would open those thoughts.
Yeah. I'm just gonna start by sharing a little gratitude, right, for starting off with that personal experience. I mean, that's just that trust to share from a personal space. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. But something that I'm hearing so much from what you shared, right, is just that the inputs, especially the more like in your face input, right, like that segregation, like bang on, like you're from this place and you're segregated, that's it, like just based on your identity. And also like those passive, subtle things that you get from the environment that you grew up in, how that can either like push you forward or just completely disrupt your life, and the kind of internal compass, the internal development that happens around the self-doubt, etc., etc. And the other thing that you said, right, to say that as an adult, like it's like when you look at it in retrospect, it's made you so strong. But in that moment as a child, it's just so painfully traumatic to go through that experience and just feel all of that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
And the thing is that most kids don't. So so the way I understand it is I had a family that was able to buffer all of that.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't have gotten through without a family that was able to buffer all of that. And so that's the thing. You shouldn't have to, as a child, have a family in other contexts that buffer against your like school environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes me back to the conversation that I was having with Shravani, right? Where she constantly asked me this, like when we were just discussing about the space itself. And Shravani brought up this point to say, you know, I have the support system from my parents, but what about all of these children who don't have that support system? Like, what about them? Yeah. And I remember that fierceness with which she asked that question as well. Yeah. Shravani, you seem to have unmuted. Do you want to share something?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to share, ma'am.
Please.
So it was great. What the ma'am, even I think she's very strong. So the stronger people we find very less in our society. The people who are there to criticize us are more. The people who are positive enough and the people who are supporting to us is very less. Okay, so we have to be strong enough. So we have to analyze what's the concept they are bringing. So what we can do with that, whether we can agree or we can fight through it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a major one where I oftenly hear from my childhood. Still now, I'm hearing this topic. So I'm like, when I think about this topic, so when this gonna eradicate? So like
Yeah.
from the ages it is coming, not like 1 year or from 10 years it is there. From the ages it started. I don't know when it gonna stop. See, like all the people, if we are together, I think we cannot stop 100%, but we can stop at least like 10% or 15%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to like bring awareness about this. So
Absolutely.
yeah, as I shared with Samyukta ma'am, that on that day, I think 2 days back, so in schools and all, yeah, definitely we have to have like awareness about these topics and all. So it's like a just awareness, like how the PT classes will be having the school, right? Like for weekly 1 hour is enough, more than enough. Weekly 1 hour. So for 1 month it will be like 4 classes. So that I think people, like if they don't take much also, like 5% the concept, it goes to the child mind, I think. So
Yeah.
that has to be done. So
Yeah.
that, yeah, like slightly we can eradicate this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think
that,
it's literally that energy that you bring in, right? And it's great to see that someone in there. Shravani is not more than like 21. And for her to come with that sort of energy right now to say that, yo, we've been seeing this for ages. Like, when is this going to stop? Like, what do we do? And she immediately moves into like a solution phase. And
yeah.
that is like my hope, right? That's it. That's where I derive my energy from. And Shravani, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I'm thinking. So when this gonna end? So from my childhood, I'm be observing and I'll be like thinking about it daily basis. So when
Yeah.
it's gonna be like eradicate? So people are there to criticize us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So like we are not having like this connectivity or I think back support.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we are still like I would like at least talk for myself, right? Like privileged enough to have some sort of support system. Like I did go through a lot, but it's still there. And I think the point is to like make sure that more people get it. And that actually brings me to Sonal and Pavitra, right? Sonal, starting with you, like in your many years of intervention with children and girls from situations of vulnerability, I was wondering if you could just expand for us what these vulnerabilities are. Like, what have you witnessed in your experience? Like, what may be the lack of access or and the presence of abuse in the different settings that they struggle with? Just expanding on what those vulnerabilities are.
So we work with adolescent girls from an age group of 10 to 19. As an average, of course, there are outliers at 8 and 9 years, and maybe a little bit of 21, 22 years. There are, of course, maybe 10% outliers, but largely it's 10 to 19 age group. And I think the vulnerability mapping studies that we have done in the past, the kind of insights that they've thrown up in the last decade or more, have always, especially I think the two specific vulnerabilities that got exacerbated during COVID were begging, children being pushed into begging and child labor because the family incomes being lost, or the parents losing their jobs, or the parents dying in COVID, and so on and so forth. So the children being pushed, children as old as 6 to 8 to 12 being pushed into begging. And the second highest cases of vulnerability that we have found have been in the incest domain. And I think sometimes, of course, we have stronger school, at least every 5 years or 4 years, I can talk about Karnataka, Delhi, Andhra Pradesh, Manipur, Puducherry. Some of these states and union territories are doing all that they can at a system level at a local governance or a state governance level to, have more inclusive, informed education systems, or even schools that talk about child protection, right? But in the larger context of the country or across, like globally, right? I keep speaking to my friends outside the country, and begging and incest cases are not just an Indian trend, which have kind of happened maybe post COVID. In one of the things that I often say that it's not that it's a new normal that people keep talking about, that yeah, COVID is gone, everybody's learning to live with it, or cope with it. I think it's not a new normal. It's going to be a never normal world, right? And today it is, of course, COVID. You don't know COVID. Again, India is looking at another wave in the country. China is already going through another wave. UK is already going through another one. So I don't know if it is a new normal or a never normal. The next, emergency that we're going to be looking at is climate emergency that nobody. Of course, there's a lot of conversation on panels, but on the ground implementation project, the investments are investments going for how our children, or the most vulnerable children or girls, are going to be dealing with the impact of climate emergency. No, there is no investment. So there might be a lot of conversation for sure, but there is no investment. So that's again another gap. But I think in terms of vulnerabilities, when we speak about child protection, it's largely a lot of child sexual abuse, begging, child labor, child marriages, and so on and so forth. But and something that we are now trying to push with the government, push with the other important agencies in partnerships with whom we work, that you cannot look at child protection in a silo. And we have in the country today where even child protection is broken down into 5 different heads, and those heads are looked at in silo. Like only child marriages, we work only on child marriages, we work only on child sexual abuse, we work only on I don't know, child hunger, or we work only. These things can't be looked at in silos. It's like saying that an individual child is cut open in 5 different silos, and each of these problem points are being addressed in a silo. So the solutions will never kind of be holistic or make sense. Second is, when we are looking at these vulnerabilities of such marginalized children who are in need of care and protection, or children who are in conflict with law, these definitions as the juvenile justice law of the country says, really, I think when you're working in silos, it's not just the themes of education and healthcare and safety, etc., that get siloed. It's also the constant ignorance or constant pushing away of the identities of these children, whether she's a Dalit, Bahujan, Adivasi, Muslim Samaj ka bachcha, whether it is a child who comes from intersectional poverty, intergenerational poverty, whether the child is even receiving 2 meals a day. The kind of vulnerability mapping is I think nobody wants to get into this also, because it's a complex piece. Every time I see scales, I see how data is being crunched at the level of child protection in the country or globally. It's always about a report card approach, right? Whether the child performed well on science and math, whether the child performed well on speaking well with peers, whether the child performed well with another XYZ parameter. Who is looking at the fact whether the child was safe or not within her own family? Who's looking at the parameters of whether the child received the two basic core meals, So I think until and unless we look at all of these identities together, we look at all of these themes of, basic access to services together, we cannot look at any sort of a holistic solution. So, for example, at Protsahan, what we have, in the last, again, a decade of our work or more, we have figured out one basic solution that works, which we, of course, we have ended up calling it the HEART approach, where H is healing. So HEART is an acronym where H is healing, through E for education, which is a non-negotiable in the life of any child for that matter. A in the HEART is art-based life skills. So a lot of mandala, a lot of judo karate, a lot of filmmaking, photography, music therapy, dance movement therapy, all of that put together for a vulnerable child who's dealing with any adverse childhood experiences or trauma. R in the HEART is recovery from trauma with all the counseling, psychosocial first aid, services that are reaching the child. And T is technology for mainstreaming, because again, as a system, whether it's civil society, whether it's governments and all of that. And I think civil society, even put together 50 times or more than what it exists today, cannot compare itself to what the government interventions should be, right? Social welfare should be a task of the government, not of individual NGOs. We can plug some gaps. We can try and be innovative with, some pieces, and then, hand it over to the government for implementation. But without social protection, looking at child protection, I think we are kidding ourselves. So T in that HEART is also mainstreaming, linking the vulnerable child and her or his family with the government welfare schemes and so on and so forth. But looking at child protection, that hey, if we teach good touch, bad touch, or safe touch, unsafe touch conversation, and we can just go away and think that solutions have happened, I think we are kidding ourselves.
That was a lot of packed insights that I'm walking away with, right? One is just to say, I absolutely agree with you. I think we tend to look at things in silos, and almost because it's just easier, because it's just so complex to think of the system and the kind of vulnerability mapping that you were talking about. So it almost feels like we just tend to take the easy way and say hey, I'm going to do this much of work. But then everything else that surrounds that child's life, what about all of that, right? And unless we work on all of that together, the wheel's not going to move forward.
And also, Samrita, how it's also, and I don't blame civil society. I mean, they're at least trying to do and fix things, especially in a country like ours, or I think civil society outside of India as well, like Michelle shared. I think it's a lot to do with also understanding that the donors will not fund projects which are complex. So a lot of it is also driven top down, because hey, donors want easy M&E frameworks. Donors want something that can be evaluated as in a log frame. And I think we need to, of course, basic parameters should be, be able to be measured for looking at the impact of how the program has gone. But we need to look at investing time. We cannot look at, these approaches of especially child protection and justice, these pieces that we are looking. If it's about, giving 200 meals to 200 children every day, yeah, that's easy on an M&E framework. But if you're looking at if access to justice was given to that child, if her POXO compensation was given to the child, if she, if there was a case of incest in her own family, was through reformative justice systems, was she given that justice? And I think because these approaches are that the donors don't have the time to give to a civil society, right? And the civil society constantly is in this firefighting mode of either raising funds or looking at outcomes and output and activities and all of those frameworks, right? Michelle is smiling. I think it's this thing where we are, it's like the tail wagging the dog rather than it being the other way around. And I think it's only folks like us who can get inside or maybe command positions on boards of whatever, because it's young people, young women, young people of color, young people who are from marginalized identities, who know what it feels like if lacks and gaps are in the system, right? And these people need to be heard and given, that access to positions, which again, donors and leaders find a little, they're a little thrifty with that.
Yeah. I'm also thinking about how long-term like these games are. Right? So it's almost like I'm just not patient enough to like wait for that outcome to come.
It's like saying, you have a plant and you're trying to grow a plant in your balcony. And you're like, no, you should grow by the end of the day, because my M&E framework asks me to do that. Or, you need to grow it in the next 10. The plant will take time for the first sprout and the first leaf and the first flower to come. You can't hasten the nourishing process of a child who's undergoing trauma. That's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. Long-term games bring me to Pavitra, right? And I know like the work that Dream a Dream essentially has done has been just very quiet, like ground level work for many, many years to get to the space that we're in right now, where we work with like state governments. But for a major part of time, like the interventions were directly with children, right? And Pavitra is essentially spearheading those, has been spearheading those programs for the longest time. So Pavitra, in your experience of working with young people from vulnerable backgrounds, what have you witnessed as major barriers that they face within the system, from the system? Yeah.
So thank you, Samyukta. Just adding to, I think, in terms of the vulnerability and adversity, what we talk is something Sonal covered vividly. Right. And usually what we used to refer all this, while adversity is something that, lack of love, care, abuse, violence, rejection, abandonment, orphaned, extreme poverty, malnutrition, and so many other things, is something that impacts young people who come from difficult background. As now we are talking about intersectionality. If we go deep, a lot of the things that I mentioned is an iceberg, but underneath there's religion, there is caste, right? There is ethnicity, there's communities, there's underrepresented community. And these are some of the young people who are not able to climb the ladder. And, it's a history, right? It's not one generation. It's not because of my parents. It's because of my parents, grandparents. It's generational. And it's deep, what we see today. And, as Sonal mentioned, we are trying to do the damage control, right? Okay, you come for my program, I think you will do better, right? And this is where you should come. And that's not how we should be working, right? And as Sonal, gave the metaphor of the plant, I was actually thinking that rather than fixing the flower to say this is how you bloom, you should actually be fixing the environment around in which the flower blooms, right? Unfortunately, that's not, how the system is looking at. For everything we have parameters, for everything we have qualitative, quantitative outcomes, and you say this is how you need to grow. And if we continue to work this way, I don't think, we would be able to make impact at a system level. I'm sure we would be able to change young people one by one, but not really at a system level. And while, we are talking about this adversity, if you look at the way system is also working, right, though there's also a world which is changing really fast, and post-COVID and pre-COVID is there's a lot of evidence, right? The world is unpredictable. We always spoke to young people about preparing for future, but I felt when that future was here, I feel as a system that we fail to support young people. And this was the time that many young people needed. It was so evident, the kind of education support system that young people had and teacher had, and the way world was, moving. There's digital divide that we were talking, and then people were talking about, educating young people in digital, and a lot of the organization turned their, content into digital. And I'm like, this is not going to work on the ground, because young people are still trying to, catch up on saying that I have keypad phone. How do I move to the new one? Even if I have the smartphone, I have 4 siblings. How am I going to manage? I felt that we were blind. I felt we worked only at our privilege, said, let's move to online and we will work. I think it's only during COVID that I was able to reflect and understand the lot of the systemic barriers and the impact that it had on people. While it is the privilege which said, lockdown extends, health is a priority. But when it came to underprivileged, people are like, let's go out. I think we will be able to beat this. And those were the differences that I saw. And it was more evident in our young people, right? They said 6 o'clock, I think if I put milk, because it's essential, I can go out without any trouble, I would be able to. And the number of young people met with an accident with those 10-15 minutes pressure to deliver was more. And I felt that, and that there are people who come from difficult background are the ones who are, availing these job opportunities. I felt there was increased amount of stress and lack of support which was placed on them. And I think this, right, one is adversity, the other one is the frantic pace of change in the world is leading young people who come from difficult background, who are actually taking time to catch up on their development, are the ones I feel is being affected. And I think it's important that we keep having conversation at a system level rather than just going child by child and saying that this is the impact that I will do. So these are some of my reflections.
Yeah, just that vivid example that you gave, right, of us pushing like the delivery people to like deliver on time and the kind of like impact that it actually has. Just that lack of compassion or just maybe lack of understanding. I almost always tell myself that if people understood deep enough, compassion would just come at that level. And I keep wondering like where the breakdown is happening, but very true that one particular piece around, it's not about just the plant, but what's the context that that plant is growing in, and are we working on that more than anything else? And like Sonal was sharing with us just a while ago, right, to say we can't just like work on one part of that context either. We've got to like pull all of it together to really make some difference. At this point, I think what I would love for us to dig a little deeper into is two different pieces, right? One is a child's awareness of all that's happening to them, all that's happening with them, and what that journey of awareness essentially is. Like, when do they start becoming very deeply aware that they're being denied something, that they're being discriminated against, abused on, depending on their like identity and not necessarily just basic human dignity or merit? Like, when do they start becoming aware of this? At like what point? And what is that journey of awareness for a child who comes from such marginalized backgrounds? Just wanted to understand your thoughts on that. And whoever, I'm just going to open up some of these questions to all of us. Yeah.
So for me, Samyukta, as you know, I'm also learning more about intersectionality and the impact it has on them. I feel, I think I'll just slip into depression, considering how the system is pushed, right? Also having, come from a minority community, which is something that, I'm reflecting now. I'm actually asking why my dad is the way he is, why somebody else in the family is the way they are. And now, I'm also investing a lot of time in understanding myself and the community that I come from and what are the values that has shaped. And I really feel it's unfair. And sometimes it's that anger, right? It just sits, and I'm trying to see how I can process that, because that's not how you respond. When it comes to, and then, I went back and then I started reflecting on the work that we do with young people. It's not that young people are not aware of it, but I feel it comes through the experiences, right? That's how I will understand that, they don't have the awareness, of course, not the language to tell it, label it and say, okay, this is what I'm going through. Right. But people, it comes through some of the experiences that young people share. unfortunately, not all the educators or teachers are also trained to prepare young people to fight these barriers, right? You look at color and say, oh, okay, like I have 4-year-old son. And in terms of the color between me and my husband, it's opposite. And whenever I take my son, they shame me, saying that, oh, like I doubt if this is your son. And today, as a parent, I sit with so much anxiety, and sometimes I cry, thinking that, how is he going to face that? I don't want, anybody telling him the kind of comments that, they make today, just looking at him, and nobody tells him cute. Why? Because cute is associated with the color, right? You look at a baby, you would want them to be fair, white, and then they say, it's so cute. But why not many people have made that comment to my son? And I kept reflecting, and I was like, okay, now I understand, what cute means when people comment for young people. And it comes through those experiences for young people. I think right now, I feel before they, grow up and realize that this is what I went through, which takes a lot of time for them to catch up on all the experiences that young people have gone through. I think it's important that a lot of this is integrated in the education system, so that, when you are growing, you're not growing up in an environment where once you grow up, 20, 25, you're actually saying, I come from upper caste. I am fair. There's this class barrier. I actually, come from Hindu background, or I am from Muslim, or I am from, Christian community, or we have converted. So we are not looking at people into these categories, but I really feel we need to use love, kindness, and compassion and empathy to to empower people, rather than just going on to bracket people into these categories. And that's how, unfortunately, the system is designed. And I know that in India, this system is 5,000-year-old, right? In terms of the caste wise, in terms of the way the system has pushed people. And just the impact itself is evident. And though at a system level, if you take at a government level and constitution level, of course, you read the constitution, you feel, oh no, I think people from this background are the ones who's getting all the facilities, but yet you don't see them in all these higher positions. And I wonder why. And I was like, yes, they are there for the namesake, but at a system level itself, it pushes them down, though it is a strength, right? So that's where I feel that before they could even label and catch up on all the trauma and experiences that they have gone through, a lot of these things should be integrated in the way we are learning in our education system. So I feel it's important we fix the education system. If you fix that, then it's a generation that you are changing. And I feel as educators and teachers, we have so much power in our hand to change the 30 young people generation. And unfortunately, that's not how we look at it, right? We just look at it in math parameters and all this. And I understand why, because this is a question that young person asked me. He walked up to center and said, Akka, I failed. And sister, I have failed in my exams. And the mother she didn't know the difference between the community center and school. She walked up to me and said, 16 years you took to tell me that my son is failed. And she felt that that's the dead end. And I said, it's okay if you have failed. There's so much that you could do. But he's like, Akka, I know that you are telling me it's okay. But that when I go out looking for a job opportunity, the system is saying, get me the certificate. Yeah. So now, who do I listen? Should I listen to you or should I listen to the system? So that's when I was like, yeah, I think, we need to break this down, not just at an awareness level, the way we hire, the way we treat, it has to go into our day-to-day behaviors. That's where I feel we would be able to slightly shift the needle is what I feel.
Yeah. That bit that you shared, it made so much sense, right? To say that as a child, when I'm going through it, I can feel the weight of all these intergenerational practices and all of that. But it takes years to actually cognitively make sense of anything that's happened. And then when you look at it in retrospect, all that anger that you feel, like I feel in that moment, all that sadness and despair that I feel in that moment, right? And yeah, that, and like when I then think about this, right, and I think about like, can children make sense of like what's happening to them? Like suddenly they just become very sad, like the children that I have worked with, that I continue to work with as well. Suddenly they just like close off into a corner. Like I'm like, okay, what just happened? Like you were just bubbling with energy for a second now. And then suddenly like the mood shifts. They don't understand like what's going on with them. And I'm sure like as we're sitting in discussions right now, having cognitively made sense of a lot of things. And that's essentially what we're trying to do right now as well, right? To kind of break this down and make sense of it cognitively. Um, but to feel that in that moment, like I understand what that awareness does to a child as they grow up, right? And that's such an important insight to take away. Thank you for sharing that, Pavitra.
Samyukta ma'am, can I add a little more point?
Absolutely, Shavani, please.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. This is my journey. Okay, what the problems I have faced personally. Okay, when I was in my school, so I was eighth standard. I was studying at that time. Okay, so I was going daily for the school normally, and the days are passing. Okay, one day one of my friend and two people. We are three friends. Okay, uh, the two girls, they are too fair. Okay, and I was little like Indian skin tone. Okay, then there was like daily, like casually things are going on. So one day she was like one of my mom, she asked, okay, we are taking photo shoots for a few people, so who and all interested can give their names. So me, my two friends and me and one more three fellows, so we have given our names. In that my name was removed. So I was thinking, okay, where I'm wrong, why they have removed, whether I think what's the thing behind that. So to inquiry this, I have went to my staff room. So I asked, ma'am, you asked me, so who the people interested to take, like we are taking the photos, so you can come and give the name. You people have been announced in the classroom. So I came personally with my own interest. So why my name is not there? I have raised the question. So ma'am was like, okay, yeah, Shravani, yeah. It is like we only have said that the people who are interested can give the names, but these people are fair enough, okay, and you are little like Indian skin tone, so like we cannot take you. Don't feel bad. Okay, we cannot take you. That's the thing. Last point. I asked why, ma'am. I think color is matter or the talent or what the thing is matters for you. I asked, but she like further she did not explain anything. She said this topic and she told. So I was like. I came out from the staff room. I was thinking, okay, if we are fair only, then for these things and all, we are like eligible. I think the criterias are like color. So who and all fair people, they can go for all these things. Who and all dark people, they are not allowed. I told to ma'am, okay, you put the banner, ma'am, or else you ask, you come and ask in the class itself that, okay, who and all fair people, you can come and give the names. Who and all are like dark skin tones, you people don't come to even visit the staff room to give your names. I said clearly, you make this statement, ma'am, then like we understand there itself, and we won't come further to like give the names and all. So I was like very depressed. Like that only it was happening, and 3 days I was very sad. I was thinking I was 8 years, I think eighth standard girl. So I don't know much about it. I was thinking from 3 days I was not having my food properly, and I was like very sad. My mom, she was asking me that, okay, daily you will be energetic and you'll like I'm the person who shares all my like daily activities and all to my mother. I have the habit that. So from past 3 days I was not sharing anything. So she was asking me that, okay, daily you will be sharing all your activities. Why today you did not share your activities? What happened? Anything wrong in the school or what happened? Anything? She asked me. I said, no, no, mom. I was thinking in my mind whether I have to say this topic or like let me like think about it, then further like explain to my mom. I was thinking in my mind. Then for first day I kept quiet. I did not ask. I did not say anything. Then the second day I thought, okay, no, I have to tell to my mom so that she'll give me the suggestion what I have to do. So I told to my mother. She's like, color is a not matters. The heart, the kind you are, and you're our child. I don't know, the friends surrounded you also, they like you, not because of your color they like. The kindness towards them, your no, that likes them, not the color. So you does not want to bother about it, what the color you are, or the what the height you are, or what fat you are. You don't want to bother about it. You want to bother about it that how kind you are for the people. So that's the matters a lot, she explained me. So that day I have took that decision that no, I think color does not matters. So the people who are saying that color is a matter, I think this is a very false statement, I felt. So I have the took decision that yeah, I think I don't want to like bother about that color, and I don't want to take that much deep, or I don't want to analyze the topic what the thing is. So that's the thing where I have went. So I don't know why the people see that the people who are black, they are like criminals, they'll see, I think so. I think their mind is like that, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
The people who are white, they are like I even still in college also I have faced the same thing. So even here they was putting the banners for the like for the freshers, for degree people, they'll be putting no openings banners. For there also the people who are fair, they took. See, still the degree level, like we are like we have the certain knowledge, we are like students where we can think about it.
Yeah.
If they do
Yeah.
like this, like white people can allow and the black people are not allow, so what's the thing? Like small age it's fine, we don't have that much ability, I think, to think about it. But the age we are like 21 years old, people can think about it and they can analyze what's the thing is going on. So still now also they are carrying means, so where can we stop this? Okay, it's
Yeah.
like I don't know what colors matters, I don't know. So if we put white paint and if we go, that time it is fine for them. I think color does not in like in jobs also. The people, some of my friends, they have attended some interviews. They are like they were asking like you people should be fair enough, and your marks are does not matter, and your skills are important. Okay, when skills are important, and why this color is very important? Does color give any like if they are fair and they are not talented, is that enough? And the people who are dark, they have the talent, that people they don't need.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
why they are like they need about the color, I don't know. Really, it felt very bad that then I came out of it. Then I was like, okay, color people will think like people will say thousand of things. So if we listen to that thing, we cannot move forward.
Yeah.
If we leave that topic there itself, then we can move and we can reach our goals easily. What I felt.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing from such a deeply personal experience, no, Shravani, and I can hear the anger, the sadness, like a lot of things. And this is also something you've been facing since you were in 8th standard, and you continue to face that even right now. And I could hear the way, like, and this is something that I was thinking, right? And I wanted to bring it up to this group as well to say, initially, like, the first thing that Shravani said, right? Like in that 8th standard when that event happened and her name got struck off, the first thing is internalizing it to say, is something wrong with me? Like, did I do something wrong? Is everything okay here? And then to like slowly make sense of it and say, no, this is actually a problem out there that needs to get fixed. It's not me. And something that I heard was also the fact that she has a mother who is so supportive of her, right? To say that your color, your weight, height, like all of that is like secondary. It's who you are as a person that matters. And that's that. And to know that there is a primary caregiver who essentially has her back on that, right? And that brings me to another discussion that I wanted to open up with this group, right? I was going through a bunch of like data and statistics, of course, which told me a lot about how people of color and other marginalized populations, they have significantly more health problems and shorter lifespans at all income levels than their counterparts. And it's especially higher in areas where there are exclusionary policies, etc., etc. There's just overall more stress and anxiety in the adults. I'm just talking about at the adult level, right? And I thought about like if we had to unpack then the adult and child relationships, the primary caregivers, the mother, father, guardian, whoever that is, and these like who have all of these massive health problems and shorter lifespans, the sort of stress and anxiety that they carry within themselves, and their relationship with the child in the household. I wanted to understand, I wanted to explore with this group, like what are the children experiencing with their primary caregivers?
I feel most of the time it's trauma. Their healing has, they have the children, and the motherhood or giving birth and all this, if you really see it is fantasized, right? They see bundle of joy and whole lot of that, those things that they push it, but the reality is different. Having worked with young people who come from difficult background, I feel, I think as parents, because a lot of that realization has also happened. One, they would have got married at an early age, right? At 25, you're feeling like 40-year-old, 50-year-old, because so much you have seen in life. And then sometimes it just goes out of the control. So a lot of that aggressive behavior is something that, is being placed on young people, and, they receive the most. And there is, support a lot in, young people, just supporting parents to overcome a lot of this. Because, we had this young girl where the father left when the girl was 4 months. And it's the mother who ensured she studied with her grandmother. And the moment she started hitting the age of 16 and 17, of course, that's the teenage age, and there's automatic attraction to the opposite gender. And because she didn't have the mother and parent, and people started labeling her as not so good character because she puts lipstick, because she puts makeup, a whole lot of that. And then she moved to the city, and she started staying with the mother. She always used to come and go off to the grandmother's place, but here at this age, because of all the challenges that she placed in her native, she started staying here in Bangalore. She was happy coming to center. You talk to her, you feel she's not from underprivileged background, because the mother ensured everything she had, from the dress that you name it to, from the college that you want, from the lipstick that you want, everything she ensured it's a doorstep, because she really wanted to ensure she does well and not slipping into the journey that the mother had. Of course, this girl has had her own difficult journey growing up with the grandmother. And one day she witnessed mother, doing prostitution work, right? And she comes back to the center. She's like, my mother is bad. I don't think I would want to live with her, right? It was so much that she was just not willing to go back to home. As an adult, how, one, of course, in her view, I understand it's difficult, but how am I going to also help this young girl, help her understand that life in city was not easy? Maybe she had to make that decision to support her, right? So that conversation with that girl was difficult. In fact, even today, she's not able to come out of what is something that she witnessed, right? So this rejection of this mother, there is the rejection of not wanting to go back to the native, lack of support system. She's not able to cope up with the life, no matter how much support that you are facing. And that's when I felt that a lot of this, the behavior, what we see is also something that they have experienced from an early age. And I think there's lot of, as Shravani said, I feel it when she said that there are more people to criticize. There are more people to tell you it's not enough. There are more people to tell you that it's okay, you will get through, which is a very easy statement to, pass it on. But that's the challenge that I have seen in young people who come from difficult background, because it's also the parent who's catching up. And in this journey, it has a lot of impact on the child too. And a lot of the adversity Sonal and I mentioned adds to the way parents behave with young people. But in terms of the development wise, if you really look at it, young people respond only to two people, and they are influenced by them. Either they listen better to their parents or the teacher, right? And not really to the other people. So hence, I think parent and a teacher play a crucial role in shaping young people.
Yeah. The fact that parents are catching up along with children, right? Everything that's happening to them. Yeah. Mishir, Sonal, would love to hear from you both as well.
Samyukta ma'am, I have a recent incident what I faced. Can I share it? Now I got remember.
Shravani, would it be okay if I just park that a little bit and just hear from Sonal and Mishir, and then we'll come back to you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michelle, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I want to say, Shavani, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It really, it helps to contextualize everything and show how many of the things that, we often have to talk about from a conceptual space when we're trying to make the case for these programs and interventions and things, being able to clearly articulate how it affects those who are going through it really matters a lot. And as you were talking about different things of your experiences, the idea of critical consciousness came to mind. I put that in the chat just so I wouldn't forget, which is just that idea, what happened with you, which is something that schools can do very intentionally and support programs can do very intentionally, which is that when we have these experiences as, and say your name for me again, Samita.
My name, Shravani's name? Shravani.
No, your name.
Oh, Sam.
Your name.
You can call me Sam to make it easy. Sam works.
Right.
Yeah.
Quite clearly is our first, and it's just what we do as humans, our first intention is that it must be something about me.
Yeah.
And so that's what we internalize. That's that pressure. That is the weight. And critical consciousness is when you can see all your experiences very critically from the perspective of there's a system here. And so it's never just about me, it's never just the individual. There's a system that privileges some and creates challenges and adversities for others. And kids need adults that enable them to see that system. And when that happens over and over again, that there's an adult that's helping them to see that system that they're in, then they get to that space of critical consciousness where you can see it for yourself. And so it allows you, you're still going to always in that first instance internalize it. But if you have a well-developed critical consciousness, you will very quickly start to say, okay, I'm feeling something that's about me, but let me look a little bit deeper to figure out what's the system that is maintaining these inequalities. And so it is something, it's critical. It's something that very few people actually have access to, because very few people have very few kids grow up in a context where they have adults around them that can help them see the system. So most of us simply grow up internalizing everything. And it's not until sometimes when we become adults that we can look back and feel like, oh, why did I internalize all of that and the weight of all of that depression? And that is trauma in and of itself. That is psychological trauma. And it's so hard to dig ourselves out of that psychological trauma. And being able to then push back against the system. The other piece that Pavasi, please say your name to me also. again?
My name. I'm so
No.
sorry. I lost that.
No, the Parvathia. Clearly, I am saying it so badly that you can't even recognize yourself in what I'm saying.
You can call me Pavi.
Pavi, okay. One of the things I also say is that compassion for caregivers, parents and caregivers, is so critical in the work that we do, because it requires, for those of you who are parents, will know very intimately the emotional space that you have capacity, that you have to give your kids emotional space to be children, to do the things that children do and not shut them down, requires so much. And most adults who have a history of adversity or in the midst of adversity, you just don't have that emotional space and emotional capacity to even give it to yourself. So then you can't give it to your kids. And the other piece is that most adults who've been through adversity, even when they want to give their kids that space, there is so much fear around and knowledge. They know that there's no buffer for their kids in terms of making mistakes. And because you're so concerned about your kids making mistakes, that you trap them into a very narrow path where you think that you're doing the best for them, because all that matters is that they get out of this financial context. And it means that their emotional development gets like shut down, and their ability to explore, their ability to be kids, their ability to make mistakes and fail and recover. That it's hard for parents to give that to children. And so the importance of building that critical consciousness for the parents also, in terms of how they see and understand what's happening with children, is so huge.
I just add on to that very quickly. So we work a lot with the understanding the neurobiology of the brain of a child who's undergone severe trauma, right? And these experiences of trauma are, they range from a spectrum, really. And we've also seen, and a lot of studies, research studies have also documented this as a fact now, that a child who has been, or a young person now, who was really lonely as a child, or who had very deeply unsatisfying parent-child relationships, they have grown up with diminished immune activities, right? They have grown up where the neurobiology of the brain was redone in a way, and this is basic physiology. This is like Pavitra was very rightly talking about the, rather than fixing the flower or the fruit, fix the environment piece, right? Because even your brain, or the basic physiology of a child who's now growing into a young person or an adult, or into adolescence, or whatever stage of life that child may be, or that a young person may be, all of these experiences are transforming the way the body is keeping the score of the experience of trauma. And I think, so there was this, for example, a very, very important study done by neuroscientists at Harvard. And so they basically studied orphan children from, I think, one of those childcare institutions and shelters in Romania. And they studied the cortisol levels of in these orphan children. And they very critically kind of, made a association, or, they had, it was a longitudinal study, so it's not that it was a one-time piece, over a period of years and years and years. And what they found was that basic hypothalamia, pituitary, and, adrenal axis in these children were already impaired. Basically saying that if we are expecting children to be aware of, and I think Michelle spoke about the looking at it at the trauma from a system lens, which is so critical, right? in these children who have experienced severe forms of emotional, sexual, physical, environmental trauma, systemic trauma of oppression of whatever kinds, when they are growing into adolescents or adults, their brain activities are already impaired by that time. So to expect these children who are now adults or adolescents to have a certain level of awareness is also not right unto those children or adults, because their brains have already, it's like saying basic psychology, right? Basic science that says that your brain will try to disassociate with that event of trauma just for your basic survival, right? Just to keep you protected. And that disassociativeness will, so for example, let me make it more simpler. Brain has these basic hypothalamus, and there is a pituitary, and there is a amygdala, and all of these cerebellum, and all of these spaces inside the brain cross section. Once if you do a cross section, and it's found that for children who've been abused emotionally, physically, sexually, the amygdala, it hyperactivates. It's a small little almond size, structure in the brain. It kind of overactivates. The hypothalamus, which is supposed to be your stimulatory emotional response system, it depresses, it suppresses itself. So to expect these children be aware, to expect these children have self-regulated behaviors as they grow is a wrong expectation to have. Because I think over a period, even for example, right, we work with a lot of these children who, these POCSO cases. So POCSO is basically a law in the country where it's an acronym where Protection of Children Against from Sexual Offences Act. It's a law in India, one of the most robust acts to fight sexual offences against children. And one of the things it basically, we've seen on an implementation level on the ground is that if a child who was raped is standing in a court of law, and there's a testimony happening in the court of law for this child, and the statement is being recorded under 164 magistrate statement, etc. The judges and the public prosecutors, basically the defense lawyers, they want to see the child cry. They will not believe the child's testimony if a sort of a response or a trauma porn, as it is called, right? Apolitical, pretty politically incorrect rather. But unless the child cries, unless the child shows messiness in the courtroom, they were like, the child is too good to be raped. She wouldn't have been raped. So also this constant piece of wanting the child to be aware of what's happened to her or him or them, right? And then there is this absolute other spectrum that we see on the ground, where something that we call, or something which has been documented scientifically as alexithymia. Alexithymia is basically like a broad term which is used to describe problems where a child or a person or a young person is not able to feel and express emotions, right? So I think that this entire piece, when we are trying to understand what trauma means on the ground, or in the real life of a child who's just maybe has not undergone a severe form of a sexual abuse trauma or an emotional, physical trauma, etc., but was just lonely as a child, right? They have had higher incidence of cancers. This population of children has had higher incidence of cancers, sclerosis, blood, lots of blood disorders, etc., as a grown-up, just because they were lonely as a child. So I think to understand what that adverse childhood experiences mean on the ground, which is of course a lot of it from literature and research and all of that, but the on ground, how they will look like, and to sensitize our media, our judiciary, our educators, basically every piece of the child protection system that Michelle spoke about, the system, if it is not sensitized, I think, and then like Pavitra mentioned, right, we can't fix the flower because it will not bloom. And to add to that, Shravani, thank you for sharing your experiences. I think I don't know what else to say, but we hear you, and we want to let you know that the system was wrong. We want to let you know, all of us, all the adults who are present here, We all want to let you know that you will, reach a life and make a life full of possibilities for yourself. Magically, you will create that life for yourself because you're aware and you understand, and you will make sure that a lot of other Shravanese, understand these pieces so much more strongly. And we hear you. We deeply hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, ma'am. Okay, so yeah, the ma'am, you're studied like much more than me. Like you have the like power. I think like you people, we have in society very few. What I found, I think this is my second person like you, ma'am, where I found, you know, the people like my faculty people. I was thinking, okay, faculty I was when I was very young, so I was thinking why my faculties are not advising me on this kind of topics. Okay, they are like bigger than us. Okay, they are very knowledge, right? We are like one portion, they are like two, three kind of portions bigger than us. They can advise the people. They can do like whatever happens, like 2% or like 3% they can change. I'm not expecting like 100% or 99%. Like they can change, but they are not coming forward. I don't know what makes them not to come forward. I still now I'm like in a dilemma that okay, when people will come forward and like advise the people. Okay, you don't want to full make this world eradicate, but the people who are surround you, you can make like whatever possible on your hands you can do, right? Okay, when coming to my personal experience, okay, I think 1 week back what I faced, okay, when my mother was speaking to my big mother, so she was bring the topic about the marriage. Okay, even she have one girl child, and I'm the girl child in my home. Okay, she was talking about her daughter marriage. Okay, we are looking for her matches and all, and she raised the topic that okay, even you're looking for your child any groom and all. So my mother, she was saying that no, not yet now. Okay, she was telling that yeah, for my child is very fair, and she is very fair enough. No, okay, we can give dowry of they can take her with free of cost only. Like they can make like not giving dowry of lakhs together, but whereas your child, she is like dark. Okay, I think you have to spend 5 lakh or 10 lakh to send your to make your child marriage. Then I was thinking, okay, from childhood I'm facing the same thing about the color discrimination. Still the people are throwing the stones on me. So how strong I have to become? I don't know. On that position I was thinking whether I have to laugh, whether I have to think about it what she's telling, when gonna end about this topic on color discrimination. So how many still how many years I have to face this? I think still my whole life I'll be facing all these things. Still the people will be throwing stones on me about the color discrimination. So how strong I should become? I was like in a dilemma. Okay, every stage I'm crossing, the people are more they are throwing the stones. Okay, I was thinking really, okay, I was laughing really when she was saying your child is very dark, so you have to give 10 lakhs of dowry to the groom. So only then only you can make your child marriage. Okay, why is the society is very importantly they want to know about other child's their color and their height and what the I would say that
Like physical characteristics, Shravani?
yeah.
Yeah.
They are not searching for the plus point. They always want to search for the minus.
Criticize. Yeah.
Thousands of pluses are available, but they don't want. They want only the 2 or 1 minus point only. I don't know why they want to focus on that only much. I was thinking what makes like what gives them like more happy or like what makes them like more to talk about that particular. I think that is a disorder in this world the people are having in our society. I would like to say.
Yeah.
Really. I felt very bad. Okay. From my childhood, I faced it. Okay. That time, really, people was saying that, okay, you don't think about it. But for me, it is very difficult on that age not to think about it. Okay. I was crying like anything. Only I know the pain or the trauma, what I have went through. It was not so easy for me to come out.
Yeah. Yeah. Shavni, I think
Yeah.
the only thing I will say here, right? Like you just clearly put it out to say that it is a disorder in the world.
Yeah.
This is not a minus point. I will tell you to like not even say that about yourself, right? Your color, anything at all, is it's not even a minus point. Just because the world says that about it, like that's not it's not a minus and a plus point, right? Like our color, our weight or height or whatever that is, there's no minus and plus to these things. It's just who we are. And as long as we are comfortable and confident with it, and it's so hard to be comfortable and confident with it, right? Because of the sheer amount of criticism and stones, like you said, that get thrown at especially children and young adults. It's that much hard till you gain that critical consciousness that Michelle you were talking about. It's just really hard to hold on to that hope. But none of this is like a minus or a plus point. It's just who you are, Shavni. And I think I just really wanted to pause for a moment and just put that out there. Yeah. But thanks again for sharing. Yeah. Okay. I suppose it was kind of a good idea not to end this live. It just feels like a more closed, really like a discussion. It feels like we're just sitting across the table and having this conversation. Um, I wanted to, I think we've already touched upon this in what Sonal you were sharing a little bit, right? In terms of just how children develop within and with just in towards the reactions of such traumatic experiences, right? You spoke a lot about the amygdala. Like I've read so much about these things, so I can quickly like connect to everything that you were saying. But just the mind-body responses to such experiences. And I just wanted to kind of split that across the different domains and see if, say, Mishia or Sonal, Pavitra, if you wanted to add a little bit more to say in the social, emotional, creative capacities, especially Sonal, all three of you actually have so many interventions that you've worked on, that you continue to work on with children, right? So I wanted to understand um, how have you seen children come into your programs? Like not prior to the interventions that you have, how are they walking in terms of their social, emotional, creative capacities? How are they walking into the programs? What have you had to focus on in the programs in terms of their development?
Okay, I think one of the pieces that we have kind of focused on since the very beginning, and I think over the last 13, 14 years, we have kind of only built on these core building blocks, has been that it should not be like another after school program where the child is, like somebody has to make a call, somebody has to make a home visit for the child to come. It should be so exciting, it should be so creative, it should be so personalized, which of course the donors don't have the time and the bandwidth to support customized programs for children. And I think everyone believes that children are some sort of a homogeneous mass where everything can be just dumped onto them without any sort of customization. Some kid would like dance, some kid would like photography, some kid would like cinema, some kid would just want to sit in a corner and read because she's a shy child. And I think all of that those pieces have to be respected. And interventions have to be made. Interventions have to be designed in order which respect this heterogeneity amongst children. And how we have kind of made these interventions seem fun for the girls. More than 80-90% of our work happens with the girls, so I'm going to focus on that piece. is by using something that we call the 5-pillar creativity approach, where there is a lot of dance movement, there's a lot of photography and cinema, and a lot of cinema appreciation classes, a lot of martial arts, and basically, lots of art and poetry and expressions, basically modalities that can make that expression that the child is feeling through but does not have the vocabulary to put it out there. But using these art modalities can put it out. Using these creative modalities can learn to put it out. Because again, the children that we work with have a lot of alexithymia, like I mentioned. They don't know how to manage difficult emotions, or they don't know how to express, because the trauma has led into this disassociative behavior. And these pillars of creativity have, I think, been those magnets to kind of bring them into the programs. Where even I very clearly remember on a day when that particular program was supposed to start at 2:00, and it was raining so heavily in Delhi, in these spaces where we work, and the child was standing with a little flex sheet. It's like a plastic sheet of like a marketing material that must have been just put somewhere in the community. So she just put, and she's standing with that little flex sheet at 1:55 p.m. outside the gates, and for waiting for the program to start at 2. But irrespective of the rains and thunders and stickiness on the roads, she was just there to be a part of the program. And I think programs that don't push people to attend, but kind of like just pull them in, like just subtly pull them in. And I think that also will come with, I think, which everybody spoke about, that will only with that compassionate caregivers who are delivering the program. One of the largest organizations in the country, I think, that uses a lot of these creative modalities to work around. I remember we were doing some training sessions with another organization in Bangalore who had come to Delhi to visit our programs, and they shared this, that this other organization that was there with them from Mumbai or somewhere, I don't know, they said that if a child was sharing their story of vulnerability, or if a child was sharing that they want to do something that they've never been able to do in a creative space, those particular facilitators were like, hey, you will not be able to do it. Like, just pick something which is much more easier, right? And I think sometimes as facilitators, or sometimes as adults, there's a lot of projections that happen, right? There's a lot of how that particular facilitator would have had their own prejudices, their own way of upbringing, their own way of understanding life, or their own experiences. They end up, and even parents for that matter, right? Or as facilitators or adult educators, whoever, they tend to project them on the children. And the only two ways to not have this be, done, or not have this create implications the way it does, is to, one, have conversations with these adults where they become aware of these projections, they become aware of their own personal biases and prejudices and gendered biases and, all sorts of biases. And the second is to have a conversation with the young people, with the children, right? Where you also give them a lens that, yeah, these adults have had experiences where they have probably also been victimized. Not as easy. These conversations need to be done with some very, very experienced facilitators, because a child or a child victim of a difficult traumatic experience, it's not that child's problem to understand what the perpetrator is or why the perpetrator is doing things, right? Yet in a very guided, I think, manner, in a very guided, facilitated manner, if these conversations can also happen with the young people, right? That why have historically oppressed people, have shown higher forms of anger. It's not their problem as well. They have been products of that oppression as well, right? So to understand, I think that the bottom line will always be amongst these threads of conversation about understanding, about compassion, and sometimes as difficult as it may be, sometimes as impossible as it may be, when we are, having conversations around reformative systems of justice, all of these pieces come back, or because jails are not the final solution or answers to the problems that people are facing. Being put behind bars and being thrashed, or if somebody does. I was just seeing some random video on Instagram today. I think, where it was not from India, I think it was somewhere outside, that a person who banged somebody's scooter or car from, on a road rage sort of a thing, the person whose scooter or vehicle was damaged, he gets off and hugs the person who had. Again, I'm not saying that forgiveness and hugging and all of that is the answer. Sometimes it clearly is not. But I think to operate from a lens in some cases, not all, for example, rape cases or sexual molestation cases, you don't have to forgive the perpetrator, right? It's really the victim's call, what they want to do. But in some of the conversations where you deeply understand why oppressed people, or why a teacher who was kind of beaten up with in his childhood or school years, why he chooses or she chooses to beat up the next. I think it's also because unless we understand, we will not know how to reform them. And as difficult, as impossible as it may seem, and I say that with a lot of responsibility, that unless you understand these projections, unless you understand their childhood, adverse experiences, solutions will never be able to, will come on the table. It will always be, this happened, and then, I did this because, hey, I don't. It'll always be a blame game. And I think to put more understanding or more compassion on the table, we have to look at some of these lenses from a reformative justice standpoint. As difficult, as impossible as it is sometimes. But there is really no other solution that I see.
I fully agree. That's what the word that came up for me around this question was dysregulation, which is essentially, Sonal, what you're talking about, where you're behaving in particular ways and you're not, so the whole mind, body, and actions, they're disconnected, because when you're growing up with the constant trauma and adversity, what it does for your ability to connect, like a feeling, a thought, and an action, and being able to delay a feeling, a thought, and then a delay before the action. The way I say it to people is, those are all of the things that socialization, that we learn through socialization. We come into the world with like feeling and action, because that's what keeps us alive instinctually. And that's what babies come into the world with. They feel hungry, they cry, they want a response immediately. That's what keeps us alive. However, we now live in these complex societies where to thrive and succeed in these complex societies, we now need to be growing up in homes and communities that provide the developmental input that allow us to put a little, that like mindfulness, a little space between our feeling and our immediate thoughts and reaction to what we actually do in response. Because most of the things that are valued in our current societies, which are not survival-based societies, for those who have power, for those who don't have power, they are still in that survival state. But if they show up in the office or in the workplace or in the school or in the government building, in that instinctive survival space, those behaviors that are associated with that instinctive survival space don't get you the strategic reactions that you need in those, schools, government offices, corporate offices, and things like that. Those are all strategic response spaces where you're like, okay, I feel a certain way, but I need to strategically think about how do I respond in this moment to get to the end goal that we're trying to get to. And that is all based on having a developmental environment where somebody is offering you protection. And then because you're in a protected space, you can focus on that like higher order cognitive thinking. But you need like a child, a baby that needs protection in order to focus on that higher order thinking. And that's getting people in schools to understand. Oftentimes it's getting, I have a project, we do some work with workforce development over here, which is working with young adults from marginalized backgrounds that maybe didn't graduate high school or were involved in the criminal justice system, but now trying to get them prepared for entry-level jobs. And one of those big things is helping those individuals in workforce development understand the need to help build those socializing skills that help to do the things that they didn't get growing up, which is that impulse control and all of those things. And this is just all of that dysregulation that comes from being in a constant state of stress and distress and trauma exposure. And that's one of the big things that we have to do a lot in our schools, is getting the adults to understand what's behind what they're seeing in the kids that they're seeing, and now getting these individuals in this workforce development space to understand what they're seeing in these young adults, and why that kind of like socialization, basic socialization, impulse processing, and all of those things are needed in order for those individuals to be able to progress in their jobs and in anything like that. So I would say that, so dysregulation is one. And the other big thing that I would point out that we try to get the adults to understand is that they don't, particularly educators, they don't have to become counselors. That it's not at all the job. They don't have to become counselors, therapists. Most of us who have experienced trauma in our lives, a big piece of it is just having somebody see you and say, I see and understand why you're behaving this way, and I can help you understand why you're behaving this way. So the other piece I would say is most of the kids and youth that we engage with, because you don't yourself know why you're behaving this way, that adds another level of dysregulation and distress, because you might be able to see, like, this is the expected standard and I want to meet that expected standard, but I keep falling so short because I just cannot self-control and self-manage. And that internal distress that the individual is experiencing is a whole other layer. But when the adults can again kind of say, let me help give you a little bit of, it's that meta level, like give you a little bit of insight into what you're seeing and feeling. One of the ways we say it is this is helping that language of emotion and behavior, helping kids to say, you might, from what I can see, you might be hurt, or you might be angry. I think you might be angry, and getting them to, like, there's this thing going on inside of you that is driving these behaviors, and helping them process that, and just doing that repeatedly. That is piece of that kind of socialization and helping people build that self-regulation. And so it's that, like, being seen, like, I see you behaving this way, and let me help you gain some insight into yourself and your history of experiences that might help you understand why you're behaving this way. The other piece.
Yeah. Just, I don't even know how to synthesize like this sort of experiences and insights that y'all are sharing with me, right? But I'm just walking away with so much of importance to, I know we were addressing, and I like how a lot of our conversations are kind of circling and interconnecting and going back to what we discussed. And like, there are all these, and that's the point of conversations like this, right? It can never be linear. Like, we can't be like, okay, let's talk about this, then this, then this. It's just not that way. And I'm I'm getting more comfortable like embracing that sort of like complexity in what we're talking about. And I'm still learning the ropes of that, right? I'm definitely not there. But few of the pieces that just like stood out to me, and I just wanted to like share that, right, was the emotional capacity for the adult to hold that space, like an adult who's gone through the same sort of, and is probably still going through that same sort of discrimination and abuse and all of that. Like, what does that capacity to hold space for their child really look like, and allow them to just be children, and not like push growth on them? And multiple pieces around dysregulation, the sort of trauma porn that Sonal was talking about was something that really stood out for me, to say that if all of us have different reactions and responses to something that happens to us, but is there something that's pre-decided and preconceived that this is what we're looking at as like a reaction and response? And if that's not there, then cancelled, like your trauma is cancelled. Like, what does all of that essentially come to mean? And yeah, thank you so much for all of the insights, for really talking from such a personal space. I really appreciate that. And I know I'm very well aware that we're about like 13 minutes away from like closing the space, because it has been like an intense discussion of more than like 90 minutes, right? And just wanted to hear from each of us before I close the space, to say like, how are you feeling right now? Like, how are you walking away? How is the last like close to 2 hours been for you? And just how are you, like, how are each of us feeling right now? I'm also going to be sharing. So I'm going to say, how are each of us feeling right now in this moment?
This is when we take pause to think.
Yeah.
So I will say that it always, for me, because I am in this kind of, I'm at a university in this academic space where I try to support organizations and schools and nonprofits and things like that. Every time I have these conversations, it just always gives me compassion for you all, in that you have to make these things happen on the ground in a way that's much more intense than me. And so whenever we have these conversations around just how complex it is, I'm just filled with compassion for, and a deep appreciation for the work that you guys do every day, trying to turn this into programming.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I'll probably go next. I think I feel a lot of grace, just generally, overarchingly. And when I go back to bed tonight, I'm just going to let out a little prayer. I don't know. I don't believe in gods, etc. But certainly some power that exists outside of me and inside me. And I'm going to let out a prayer for all the extra 4 people that I had on this panel today. So just in grace.
Thank you.
For me, I think this is the first conversation that I am having after I started reflecting more on intersectionality, systemic barrier, inequities that is there in the system. So now, considering the way this group feel, honestly, I'm feeling sense of comfort that yes, the system is speaking up. It's not all alone, that I'm holding on to it. I think the way Sonal spoke, I'm sure the work that Protsahan will do will ensure that this is integrated in everything and ensure that there is equity and dignity in the kind of work that they will do. And there's so much, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, oh, I'll just leave it. So sorry, Keels, okay, that's the last name. I'm with the experience that you shared and what Shravani, definitely the upcoming generation having this language. And I wondered, I wish I had I think today I would have been the different person if I was able to articulate the way Shravani did it. So, and I was like, yeah, I think there is some changes in the way, Shravani's, generation is coming. So there's a lot of hope and openness in the way they shared. So I think there's that sense of comfort, and I feel that this needs to increase. Only then we would be able to change the mindset and make a difference at a system level. So I'm just going to walk back and say that I think there is a better world for my son and for a whole lot of the young people who would be growing up, and we need to hold this space really tight so that it's just becomes part of the being of young people and they don't have to go through what we went through. I think we have a lot of responsibility to create that system. Thank you.
Thank you. Shravani, would you like to share? How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, sure. I was waiting to share actually. Okay, today you 4 people made my day. Really. I never thought that, okay, I have some 4 people who gonna come like angels and talk about this kind of topics, because never I have heard about people are speaking about I was thinking that, okay, people are actually talk about all these kind of topics they will be talking, or else like really still now I never found the people who can come and talk about this topic and make and give a like positive vibe to the people. I was a person who share with one person, that is my mom, but now I have 4 persons who have they came to me like angels, and I was but now I had a hope this will change. I think these 4 people can change, not for not for full world, but the part of the world they can change. Really today I'm glad to meet all of you. Really this is a day I never forget. Really in my life I never forget my birth date, and this date it will be like for me like memorable day. Really I was never expecting. Really, okay, I have the persons I can share my feelings with. My mom I shared all kind of these feelings. Now I'm sharing like I felt like you people are my sisters, really, who I can openly share my feelings, because you people gave me that kind of a space where I can say. Really, it was like very good day for me. Really,
Um,
thank you all of you for really, ma'am, Samyukta ma'am. Thank you for this. You gave me this wonderful opportunity. Really,
you
thanks.
accepted an invitation that I had to like ask of you. I don't think I'm the one who should be definitely thanking you for saying yes to something like this, right? And Shravani has definitely been that one to like re-drill that lesson into me to say like, forget the globe and the universe and everything. Just think about at least your immediate surrounding and work from there, right? And that's something it's been ringing in my head since the first day that I had a conversation with Shravani, and thanks for that. Me, well, my mind's definitely like, I'm thinking of like my mind is like a balloon, right? And there is like this much that I walked in with, and each of you have like blown in so much more air into that perception of that balloon, and it's just like a little bigger right now. And frankly, a lot of emotions, and they're mixed emotions, right? I definitely have anger. I definitely have grace, compassion. Like I'm feeling a lot of mixed emotions. And I know I'm gonna have to walk out and like just ground myself a little bit and make sense of like what's happening. It might just be the age that I'm at right now. And like I can't immediately just switch completely into grace. And I'm okay with that. Um, I'm just grateful to know that there's all of you out there who care about this and want to do whatever is in our best capacity to understand this as well as work with children who come from such populations, right? With that, once again, thank you so much. In the next few weeks, it's definitely going to take me some time to come back to this video quite a few times with my team and just cull out the insights from this discussion. And then we'll publish a white paper of sorts, right? And I'll share that with each of you, and you can use that and share it within your networks as well. That you'll essentially get that email from me in the next few weeks. Until then, I really hope to stay in touch with each of you Thank you so much for the last 2 hours. Really, really grateful. Yeah. Thank you, folks. Have a wonderful week ahead.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a wonderful week.
Yeah. I didn't get that. Oh, it's okay. Bye, Shravani.
Bye, ma'am.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Reach out if you need anything, okay? Just like drop me a message. I'll just be one text away.
Sure.
You're feeling okay, no?
What, ma'am?
You're feeling okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that
Still
sounds good.
my dynamo, really.
Yeah. Yeah.